Hello again, this is Budgies Are Cool back with another video in my little series about how to use Paint Tool SAI for beginners. Now, in this one, we'll be going over how to use the various tools on here and layers over here. Um, I guess first off, I should talk about the smoothing or stabilizing feature, which it really helps when you're trying to do delicate situations. So for here you can see that I make a circle-ish thing and you can definitely see some bumps in there. But if you set it higher, I'm actually not sure what this does up here. It definitely smooths it, but I like using the S range, so S3, and it makes a very nice and smooth circle. So that's just the difference between pure numbers and the S followed by the number. I like using S3. So here's the pen. Pen is a wonderful tool. It's just your typical drawing thing. So and each tool, you'll notice that in the little drop down menu over here, no, it's not a drop down menu, just the options for the tool, you'll have all these different settings that you can set. So for tools, or for pens, I like to set it to this one, which is you draw it and then you see a slight blur kind of on the side. So I'll zoom in on these lines. So here's this one, which is more blurred on the side. And as you get more to the right, you'll become more and more square or binary. So this one is pretty much on or off. Well, I guess true binary is the binary tool, which is where'd it go? Right here. So that's true binary right there. It's either color or nothing. But that's a completely different tool. So we'll get to that later, maybe. So I like to be over here. You can also set the size with that. It'll show it in the middle of the screen. But like I said before, I like using Control and Alt to switch it. And in my other video, I actually said that I set that, but I looked again and I couldn't find it in key config because it's just it's just purely Control and Alt, which you can't find in here because it's always Control Alt followed by another key. So I'm not really sure how that works. Maybe it's just a default thing, or maybe I'm completely crazy, but either one of those is fine with me. Oh, you can also set the minimum size. So I have my minimum size set to 0, so it goes down to a point based on the pressure of the tablet or pen that you're using. That's another thing. You can't do this with a mouse because it doesn't sense pressure. While tablets, so mostly the Wacom tablets, there are other brands too, but Wacom is the main one. So that senses pressure, right? So if you have it set to like 50%, you'll notice that it just kind of tapers off without actually getting smaller physically. And speaking of that, there's the right over here is pressure will affect one of these things. So if I say none of them, we're just on or off. If I say density, will fade away. If I say size only, then will be a sharp line that goes to a point. And if we say a mixture, it's the best of both. So that's really useful. And of course there's also hardness, densities, those you can just play with on your own. And yeah, you can do that for pretty much any of the tools. So for airbrush, for instance, I have it set to actually based on what I'm doing, I'll have it set to this one or this one, which is a little less blocky. just depending on the look that I'm going for. Also the minimum size, I like to have it a little higher density. It's if you want things to be not so touchy, so you can go over it a bunch of times with only changing it a little, then set the density lower. If you want it to just be one sure stroke, then set it higher. Of course, I like mine in the middle again. And density and size, same thing. Now, the brush tool, however, I like to, wait, that wasn't a sentence. It's a little different. It's, I use it to kind of blend colors once in a while. So I'm using blue right now. If I switch to green, and I make that a little bigger, you can see that it kind of takes from the other colors. So you can adjust these over here again. So if I set color blending all the way to 100, the color that you have selected over here won't affect anything. It'll just take from the color that you're on, that you kind of drag to or from. Actually, yeah. Unless if you're on nothing, of course, then you'll get your regular color. Of course, there's kind of contradicting myself when I do this because I'm forgetting about opacity mix, which if it's all the way up to 100, then nothing will happen when you're on nothing, but something will happen once you're on something that you've already made. So I'll go back to no smoothing, and you can also set the persistence. So when I start in here with full pressure and I drag outside, it only lasts for a little while, right? So if I set the persistence all the way up, then we're gonna keep going and going and going and going and going and going. And say if we start outside, we can take that out. So this is really good if you just kind of want to blend things without adding more than you really need to. And speaking of blending, we have the blur tool. Is it called the blur tool? Yeah, right there. I have it set to hotkey R, or not hotkey, but keyboard shortcut. So with this one, of course you can set all the different settings, but to get the gist of it, you just go over something and it blurs it. Actually, I have a texture set on here. Over here you can set the texture. So right now it's on paper, that's why you have this slightly grainy look on the outside, but usually I have it set to none. So that'll smooth everything out again. And this is really useful for, again, anything you can think of, which I guess that wasn't the most useful of statements, but it's true. And that's about it for tools. Of course there are other colors or other tools such as the water tool, the marker tool, or yeah, there's a lot of things. But like the marker, I kind of use like the pen tool. When I change the various settings, it can be pretty similar to it. Eraser tool, depending on what you're trying to erase, you'll have it like this. So yeah, it's just, wow, I just kind of lost what I was trying to say. But you can have it so that based on your pressure, you can have this just the density change, or you can have it so that only the size changes, and everything's wonderful after that. So that's it for tools finally, and now let's go on to layers. So all that we've been doing so far is working on one layer, and over here you can see the little eyeball right there, and when it's there, that means that your layer is visible. When you click it and it's gone, the whole layer is gone. And by default, the background, even when there's nothing there at all, is white. In other programs such as like Photoshop Elements, you'll see a checkerboard pattern, but here we don't do that. Now to make a new layer, you go over here, click it, and based on whichever one is highlighted, that's the layer that you'll be able to work on. So here I'll use red and I'll draw over stuff. So the good thing about layers is they're pretty much the same as, you know, those transparencies that your teachers use, or at least used to use, where you can draw on one, then get another transparency, draw on that one, and then put them on top of each other, and they look like they're on the same thing, but you can affect them or edit them differently. So I'll have the eraser tool, and I can erase the red without affecting the stuff in the back. Same if I go to this layer, I can erase the blue or the green without affecting the red. So these are just separate layers. Also, one more thing that you can do with them is pressing this tool or this button. You can do that, and that'll combine the layer that you're currently on to the one that's below it. So they're one layer now. So that means when I try to do something, it'll affect both of them equally. And also, Control Z is your best friend, so if you mess up, you can always undo something. And that might be all. Oh no, that's not all. So you have something like this. You can use the bucket tool to fill it in completely if you want to. You see these because of its tolerance, the color difference or precise. I usually have it on either precise or color difference, depending on whether I'm trying to fill in an outline or something that's not an outline, pretty much. So I'll just make a little block over here, use the bucket tool, fill that in, and now you can use the opacity setting to change how opaque it is, the transparency of that layer. So yeah, that is about all that I can currently think of. You can have lots and lots of layers and make things really confusing, so that's another thing. You can double click the layer name and then you'll be able to call it whatever you want. So this is layer 2 ... That was really creative. So yeah, there's opacity. Oh, one more thing. If you want to affect only what you have on your current layer, so I'll make that go away for now, then you can check this box and opacity lock will, well, just check the opacity lock box, and with that only the parts that you've already drawn on will be affected by whatever you do. So if you uncheck that and I try to do the same thing, it's going to go everywhere. But when I check it, it only affects what's there. And the nice thing about it is it keeps your opacity, so it won't mess things up. So like if you press Control or hold Control and then press your layer, you'll select what's already in there. So this might be going a little too far depending on how familiar you are with this program, but when you do that, actually it's kind of nice. The wand tool is a really nice tool. It is, it's up here. You can use the magic wand and whatever you have selected will be blue or purpley, or just depending on the opacity of what you selected was. I'll go more into the wand tool and the lasso select and box select later when I'm doing actual drawing tutorials, because without an actual outline or something to edit, it's kind of difficult to explain, at least for me. But yeah, if you have that selected, which you can make another layer and affect only that part that you have selected. You can also press, I'm not sure if I did this or if it's a default, but I press Control D to get rid of the outline, but I also press D to get rid of whatever's in the outline. And by outline I mean selection, sorry. So yeah, that's about it for this video. Thank you for watching. This is Budgets Are Cool. Take care.